Sounds good.
Yeah,
Okay.
the floor is yours.
Sure. Thanks, Naveen. Do you want to do like a kickoff
Yeah,
initially?
yeah. Naveen, do you want to kick it off? Then I'll take it
Yeah,
forward.
yeah. So, hey, welcome to everyone for joining this session from UiPath Dallas chapter. So, this is a series two in test suite automation for UiPath using UiPath Autopilot. So in the initial session, Arun has showed us how Autopilot is in leveraging lots of test suite functionalities and how we can create test cases and all these things. And this session is more oriented for advanced and highly technical folks. So I would definitely jump right ahead. And coming to introducing our speakers, Logesh Velu and Arun Kumar and Tripti Ganeshan. Uh, so they are all coming from Cubotica, and myself, Naveen Chatlapalli. I am the Dallas chapter lead and recent MVP for UiPath. So I work for Ashling Partners as a solution architect, and I've been working with them for 4 years. And yeah, that's about me. Logesh, you can get started.
Sure. Thanks, Naveen. So we'll do like a quick round of introduction, and then probably Arun can give a recap of session one, right? And then after that, you can hand it over to me. I can like do a quick overview of what will be the agenda for today, and then we'll start going through each and every topic, right? So my name is Logesh Velu. So I am from Kubatika. I've been in Kubatika for a couple of years now. And I have like around 14 years of experience in the industry, mainly around automation, right? So initially, I started my career as like a test automation developer. Later on, I worked like a test manager, and eventually, I started working on process automation developments as well. So it's been almost like 5 years since I started using UiPath. So I'm happy to present this topic today since I have like a test automation and testing background. So feel free to reach out to me through my LinkedIn channel if you have any questions, or always you can reach out to me through the chapter leads. Arun, if you can quickly introduce yourself.
Yes. So I'm Arun Kumar Shakan. I'm part of Cubotica. I'm also a delivery lead based in the US. And we are very actively participating in all the UiPath community events just like this. This is part of the Dallas community. And if you're not joined Dallas community and you are in this locality, I highly encourage everyone to join this UiPath chapter. Okay. Yeah. Chitu, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi. Thanks. Hope you can hear me.
Yes.
So I'm Chitu Ganesan. I'm part of Cubotica. I joined 2 months ago. I'm a practice lead for SAP and UiPath topics. Previously, I was with UiPath for 5 years, leading multiple topics, and at SAP for close to 21 years before my current role. So I'll keep it short there and back to Arun or Lokesh.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Next slide, please.
So yeah, Arun, do you mind giving like a quick recap of session one, and then probably I'll go through the agenda.
Yes. So in the session one, we did introduce the basics of UiPath Autopilot for testers. Basically, we introduced how do we create test cases from requirement, curate those requirements before we even create those test cases. How do we automatically generate coded test automation from those test cases, and also look at the insights from the test automation runs, and identify where we can improve and build on the test cases. Right, those are the basic four capabilities which got introduced by UiPath test suite. And in this session, we'll deep dive into more advanced features, which are more than normally shared across other community events. So this will be more technical, more interesting, and that's the reason I introduced Logesh and Chittu. So Logesh is basically a more hands-on technical UiPath expert, and Chittu is having a very vast SAP knowledge, and we're trying to introduce SAP into the mix to show a very good end-to-end use case, which makes sense for practical purposes, right? So that's the reason I invited Lokesh and Chitu to join this event and make it more fun. And feel free to stop us, engage us with questions, and you can also post your questions on the chat. We can address it. Okay. Back to you, Lokesh. Do you want to go through the agenda?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Um, So, in terms of today's agenda, so we are going to talk mainly about some of the autopilot capabilities, especially test suite autopilot capabilities that we have not explored in the session one, right? In session one, probably you might have heard about the evaluate requirements option, how to create a coded test case through autopilot and few other capabilities of test suite. But in today's session, we are going to focus on again one of the autopilot capability like data generation using autopilot, right? So we're going to talk about the existing available data generation capabilities within UiPath plus the new addition which is going to be like generate with autopilot. That's like a smart way of generating the test data for your test cases, right? And then we'll talk about the best practices for test data generation using autopilot. We'll have like a quick demo. And for today's demo, we are going to take SAP sales order creation as like an example. So we are going to have like a test case which will run through like a data driven testing. We are just going to generate like the test data needed for the sales order creation, and we are going to plug into that particular test case. And once we run the test case, it's going to run different iterations right through that particular test data, and eventually we'll also see how to review your results. UiPath has like a autopilot generate insights capability now, right? Through which you can actually generate insights from your test execution results. And based on that, you can take some informed decisions, right? Okay, so how many test cases passed, how many has failed, what is the reason for the particular failure, what could be the potential errors. So it's going to, using generative AI, it's going to provide some detailed insights, and it leverages autopilot AI underneath, right? So it's going to provide more accurate and precise recommendations for you. So we're going to go through the generate insights option. And we'll also talk about another important component, which is like SAP Heatmap and change impact analysis. So SAP Heatmap is more of like a data visualization solution, which will help you to understand what critical components from SAP that you have to test. Plus, it's going to show you the test coverage as well. Okay, so I understand this is my SAP component which needs to be tested more, but how many test cases are associated with that? Is that like, has the test cases passed or failed? Basically, you can visualize what components you need to test, plus your coverage using the heat map and change impact analysis as well. So Chitu, who is our SAP practice head in Cubotica, he will talk about SAP heat map and change impact analysis, and we'll see a quick demo of the SAP heat map and change impact analysis as well. Okay. So being said that, so if you have any questions, feel free to post in the chat, as Naveen mentioned. So towards the end of the session, we'll spend some time to go through your questions. Even if there are no other questions, we have prepared like a FAQ, common asked questions in terms of test suite capabilities and autopilot. So we'll go through that FAQs depending on how time permits. But yeah, we'll get started with the topics. Okay, so in this slide, we are going to it's talking about the data generation capabilities, right? So when it comes to testing, right? Data driven testing is like an integral part, right? You can't just test, you can't just like test a test case with just one or two test data, right? If you take a SAP sales order, for example, so let's say I have like a scenario called create sales order or verify if my sales order creation is successful, right? For that particular test case, you can't just test with one or two data combinations. There will be number of fields involved in that screen. So you may need to test with different kind of data, and especially like a manual tester or an automation tester, typically they spend a lot of time generating that test data. And they do it manually, right? They like take a spreadsheet, they populate all the test data, they call it test data matrix, And in some cases, like they'll be creating like a test case matrix, which is nothing but a combination of your test case and the test data, right? So they spend a lot of time preparing the data. In addition to that, they need to set up the environment, right? Whether it could be like a system test or UC, they need to set up that environment with that particular test data as well, right? And it takes a lot of time. So either it's like a manual tester is going to test the application with a variety of combinations, test data combinations. Whereas automation tester, you would need that input for the automated test case, right? Um, from a UiPath perspective, how do you do that, right? So within UiPath test suite, especially within Studio, when you actually create like a test automation project, for each of the test cases, you can add test data, right? And you can generate that test data through various ways. As you see in the screenshot, like you can use like a file, nothing but like a simple spreadsheet with all the test data populated. You can just import that test data into your test case. You can use things like data service. Data service is nothing but a service within automation cloud where you can like put some structured info, right? Typically like rows and columns with your data, and then eventually you can link your test data to the test case and then test data queue. So same like RPA automation queues, right? You can leverage the test data queues where you can create different number of queues, and for each queue item you can put some input data as well. So there are different ways you can create the test data. But in today's session, we are going to mainly focus on the autopilot, the newly introduced autopilot capability, right? Generate with autopilot, this one, right? So generate with autopilot is nothing but it's like a option when you're actually creating like a test case, or once you've created like a test case, you can just right click on the test case and choose a generate with autopilot. What it does is it takes the arguments from your test case as an input, and it starts generating the test data that is needed for that particular test case, right? And you can refine them with further prompts as well. That's a more important part. When it comes to other types of data generation capabilities, you can't actually improve that data. When you say you can't, you have to manually improve them, right? You have to manually edit the fields, add the data, and all those stuff. But when it comes to generate with autopilot, like any generative AI capabilities, right? You can just provide the prompts, and based on the prompts, it's going to improve that data. So just to quickly show you how that works, let me switch back to my studio. So this is my test automation project. So I just created this test automation, like typically like however you create your process automation, right? So process automation, you would use process option, whereas in test automation, you'll use the test automation project, right? Once you click on the test automation project, it's going to be like a default project, right? With no test cases, no folders here. You can just right click and add and then like create a test case. In the last session, you might have seen the coded test case. In this session, we are going to use a regular like low code or drag and drop kind of test cases, right? You just drag and drop activities and then build that test case. We are going to use that option. So once you click on add test case, that's just going to create like a test case for you. You can choose any templates. You can leave that BDD test case as it is for now. And then once you click on create, here it shows a different kind of test data, right? When you're actually creating the test cases, you can choose this option and start creating the test data that is needed for a particular test case. You can do one more thing as well. You can leave this none and then click on create. And then once the test case is created, you can see the new test case here in the test explorer panel. So test explorer panel is mainly designed to like manage your test cases, add test data, test with like test sets and all those stuff, right? It's more of like a attended way of running your test, right? You open your studio, open test explorer, and then you can run your test cases. And once you run your test cases, you can upload your results to test explorer and all those stuff. So in test explorer, your test case appear. You can just right click and add test data, right? And once you click on add test data, the same screen would appear wherein you can choose whatever import option that you want to use. If I use file, I just need to create like a spreadsheet with my test data. But if I use generate with autopilot, it's going to generate the data for me. But the only caveat is with autopilot, you need some arguments, right? So the autopilot needs some kind of inputs to start generating the data for your test case. So currently, since there is no arguments, it says this message, but once you create the argument and use the same option, it will start creating the data. And then eventually you can optimize that with providing further prompts. So we'll see that all in detail in few minutes. Probably instead of just going through directly to the test case, we'll start from the regular one, right? So during the demo time, we'll show how to create requirements, corresponding manual test cases, then automated test cases. Then we'll create like a test data for that test case, and eventually we'll show how to run the data-driven testing, upload the results, and all those stuff. So we'll see the end-to-end flow. But just wanted to quickly show you where this option exists in the studio to create the test data that is needed for your test case. So switching back to the slide, so we discussed all these different options, right? And whatever I did on the UI, that's the same screenshot that you see here. Like you can add the test data when you're actually creating a new test case, or after you create a new test case, you can just right click on the test case through the test explorer panel, add test data, and then you can choose whatever the type of options that you want to choose, like a file, data service, or generate with autopilot. So going to the next slide. So this slide talks mainly about how to generate that test data using Autopilot. As I mentioned earlier, you open the Test Explorer, you click on Add Test Data, Generate with Autopilot. Autopilot generates initial test data based on your test cases parameters. Whatever test case that I earlier showed you, that's just a new test case. I haven't added any steps or I haven't added any arguments, so it didn't generate any data. But once we have all the steps and the arguments plugged in, it will automatically generate some data. And then you can further improve the data by adding specific prompts in the provided text field, right? So there is going to be a prompt underneath that. So initially it's going to generate a data like this. For example, in this case, it generated argument 1 with all this data, argument 2 with all this data. And then at the bottom, you see a like small text says, write an additional prompt for better results during generation. So you can provide your prompts and then further optimize your test data, further improve your test data. If you want to add additional columns, you can mention that in your prompt. If you want to add additional rows, you can mention that in your prompt. If you want a column to be in a specific format, for example, PO number, right? I want my PO number to look like PO with a prefix and then followed by 4-digit number. So you can provide all the prompts here, and once click on send, it's going to realign your test data or change your test data accordingly. So that's the benefit of having generate with Autopilot. Now it supports all these different kind of argument types: string, integer, boolean, the typical the primitive data types, right? And based on customers feedback, based on feedback from community, UiPath may keep improving this as well. So it's in a new stage now, right? It's introduced as a new capability. When you're actually providing the prompt, sometimes it may not provide the very accurate results, but you can start providing appropriate prompts to make it accurate. In addition to that, you can also test and provide feedback to product team, where they'll be able to improve the product based on your feedback as well. So in terms of the savings, Autopilot can save up to 50% of the time spent, right? It's an efficiency boost. So imagine if you take a manual tester or automation tester, if they have to develop this test data manually, they have to spend a lot of time, as I mentioned. And when it comes to test data management, not just creating the test data, but also like setting up the application accordingly, right? Your test environment or UAT has to have that input test data. So it's a lot of work when it comes to test data management. On Autopilot for test data generation can save up to 50% of the time spent on test data management, right? Test data creation is like a core part of the test data management, right? So it can save up to 50% of the time spent. How it can save, as I mentioned earlier, if you have to do that, you have to do it manually. You have to set up the test data queues or data service. Over here in generate with Autopilot, it automatically generates based on our arguments, and you just need to provide additional prompts to optimize that. So moving on to the next slide. So this slide mainly talks about the best practices for data generation. So I just wanted to quickly show you a documentation that UiPath has published in their official documentation. So you can take a look at this recommended best practice for how best you can provide your prompt, how to adjust your prompts to get the accurate results. Some of the best practices that I mentioned are like you have to create your arguments appropriately, right? You can just say like arg1, arg2, or you can just say like value 1, something like that. It's not going to provide you the accurate test data. So in my case, since it's a SAP sales order creation, if you're worked in SAP, especially when you're creating a sales order, typically you need to provide inputs like a material, quantity, purchase order number, or you need to put sold to party, those kind of input parameters. So if you provide those input parameters as argument names, your autopilot will automatically recognize that and generate the data for you. But further, you can provide additional prompt to improve that. So I want my PO number. Not every SAP system will have like a follow like a same kind of input values or parameters, right? For example, sold to party may vary, your customer reference may vary, or the material, especially the material, may vary. So depending on what is set up in your test environment, or depending on your understanding of what kind of data that you want to use for your test case, you can curate your prompt and then provide that prompt. Once you provide the prompt, it's going to curate the test data for you. So as I mentioned, create proper arguments, and then specify data combination methods. Typically in testing, you can call some methods like pairwise and all combination, right? All combination means it will generate test data to cover all the different combinations of arguments, right? For example, purchase order number, purchase order date with like material, or maybe for example, the material with sold to party, but customer reference could be empty. So those kind of all the different combinations it will cover. Whereas pairwise means at least one of the arguments would be covered. So basically, it will use those methods to determine how many test data records it need to generate, what should be the coverage of those arguments, input data, etc. Right? So you can use some of those keywords like pairwise, all combinations to create like a data that suits your needs, right? In addition to that, you can also customize the data set. When I say customize, you can tell the minimum number of records that it needs to generate. For example, generate a minimum number of 25 data records. You can include additional columns. For example, include the country field, assigning unique value to each record. So each of my column record should have like a unique value. So you can customize your data set with the prompts. So these are some of the best practices that are there in the documentation. So keep checking that documentation. UiPath may publish additional recommendations as well. So this is like a good like starting point if you're looking for any best practices in terms of what kind of prompts that you may need to provide. So, okay, so we discussed all these different things, right? For example, test data generation using Autopilot, and then what kind of argument types it supports, how do you do that from a studio perspective, and the best practices as well. So we'll quickly see like a demo through the SAP scenario, the create sales order scenario. So we will start from the requirements. Basically, we'll try to connect whatever Arun did in the initial session with whatever we are doing today, right? So that we'll have like an end-to-end workflow, create requirements, and then we are going to evaluate the accuracy and completeness of the requirement. And then we are going to create manual test cases, and then we are going to create automated test cases for those manual test cases, link them together, and then we'll create like a data-driven testing, like data through the autopilot. Through the autopilot, we can create like the data needed for the test case. And finally, we will go through the generate insights part. In between, we'll talk about the SAP Heatmap and change impact analysis as well, which is like another critical or useful component in test suite. So I'm just going to go back to my test manager. So this is my test manager project. I don't have any requirements here, so I'm just going to start from the scratch. Consider that for SAP sales order creation, I have like a requirement. I'm just going to, as a business analyst, I'm just going to upload the requirement to the system now. So this is, I'm just going to click on create requirement. And this is going to be the title or name for my requirement, sales order creation in SAP. And I have like a ready-made requirement, which I'm just going to copy and paste it here. This requirement is nothing but it talks about like as a sales representative, I want to create and manage sales order in the SAP system efficiently so that I can ensure accurate and timely processing of customer needs. And there are some further acceptance criteria that would typically you see in the SAP requirements, right? For example, sales order creation, you need to use this particular transaction code, VA01. And then these are the details that you need to fill in: sold to party, customer reference, material quantity. And then you also need to, there are some additional requirements as well, which we're not going to go through in detail now, but you can just consider that this is like a sales order creation requirement. And I'm just going to click on create. So as soon as I click on create, my requirement is created. I'm just going to open the requirement. There are a couple of options that you see on the top. One is evaluate quality and generate test. Evaluate quality, as you know, that's used to evaluate your requirements. That's again an autopilot capability which uses generative AI. It's going to analyze your requirements, quality aspects like clarity, completeness, and consistency as well, right? So you can use that option. Once we use that option, it's going to analyze the requirement. We are going to add some suggestions that the autopilot suggests. Then we'll go on to the generate test, which again is autopilot capability, which will create test cases based on what it understood from the requirement. So I would expect my test cases to be relevant to this particular requirement. For example, it would, let's say, validate if the sales order has successfully created and a number has generated. That's one test case, right? Another test case could be validate if the user is able to retrieve the submitted sales order, validate if the user is able to change the sales order, or validate the net value. For example, if you provide like a material with a quantity, it's going to like find out the material cost for like one material multiplied by number of quantity that you provide. Is that equal to the net value? So it's going to create test cases based on such requirements. So we'll just click on evaluate quality for now. We are just going to evaluate the quality of the requirement. If you want to provide additional supporting documents, you can provide it here. If not, you can just click on next. And then you can choose any prompt from here. Probably you might have seen this option in the last session. Multifaceted auditors, it's going to evaluate my requirements against different criteria, right? Consistency, performance, security, clarity, and all those stuff. Performance evaluation, again, just the performance facts. Security, just the security facts, right? It's going to check for that. And if there's something is, if it feels something is missing, then it's going to recommend that, and you're going to add that to the requirement, and it needs to be further improved, right? So just a high level recommendation, it further needs to be improved. So I'm just going to choose multifaceted audit for now and click on evaluate quality. It's going to evaluate the quality of the requirement. Now it's going to take a little bit of time. So while it's generating or while it's evaluating the quality, probably we'll talk about the rest of the steps, right? So we created a requirement. Now we are analyzing the requirement. And once a requirement is analyzed, we are just going to add the recommendations it provides to the requirement. The benefit is your requirement would be more clear, more accurate, and which could result in less bugs, improved quality of the product, faster time to market, plus cost per defect as well. Your cost per defect would be very much reduced, right? So here, if you see, it has generated some recommendations. I'm just going to add some of these, like, for example, refined user flow description. It's not clear. So I'm just going to add it to the requirement. It says create a comprehensive user flow diagram that includes all steps from login to sales order verification. So that's an action item for the business analyst, right? So they are going to add these particular details, which will further improve that requirement. In addition to that, if you want to add additional enhancements, you can always click on the quality enhancements, add any of these additional enhancements as well. For example, define pricing calculation logic, outline data validation rules, and all these things. I'm just going to add another one. I'm not going to add anything else, and we're just going to leave it there, and then we'll move on to the generate test option, right? So it recommended a couple of enhancements. I just added a couple of enhancements, and I'm just going to move to the generate test option. So now I'm just going to click on generate test. Again, it's the same scenario. If you want to provide further documents which Autopilot could use to understand the requirement more in detail and create relevant test cases, you can upload them. But if you want to skip them, you can just skip them and click on next. And here, similar to what we see on the other screen, like multifaceted audit, performance evaluation, and all those stuff, here these prompts are relevant to test case generation. And testers typically would have come across all these different kind of keywords, right? Or terminologies, right? For example, end-to-end flow verification, boundary value testing, and all these different options, right? So it's just a predefined prompt. You can just choose. For example, in this case, I'm choosing end-to-end flow verification, and it gives me like a predefined prompt. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Yeah. So once you click on generate test cases, it's going to generate the test cases for me, right? Just to save time, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch to the studio now while it's generating the test cases. Let's start creating the automated test cases. So all we are going to do is it's going to create like a manual test case for me, right? And I can, since my studio is connected to the particular project, if I go in here, since my studio is already connected to the particular project, all my manually created test cases will start appearing here. You can right click, and then so here it's an automated test case. There isn't any manual test case yet. So once the test cases are created, you can just right click and create an automated test case. You can do the other way around as well. For example, you can directly create the automated test case and then link your automated test cases to your manual test cases as well. So let's go with like directly creating like a manual test case, sorry, automated test case for now, and then eventually we'll link it to the manual test case. So this has it has the response has come up, right? So it provided some test. I'm just going to choose some of the test cases that I would like to add to the requirement. For example, verify sales order save functionality, check sales order retrieval, and then maybe one more, maybe validate automatic pricing calculation. But I'm not going to automate everything. I'm just going to pick one particular use case, which is check sales order, sorry, verify sales order save functionality, right? So this is my test case. There isn't anything linked to this particular test case. So I'm just going to copy this test case and keep it ready, right? Because I have to link my automated test case to my manual test case. In Studio, so let's take this particular test case, for example, right? So we already created like a BDE test case. I'm just going to give some better names for it, say like sales order or create sales order TC001, and then my name could be almost like same as the same this one, right? Verify sales order save functionality. I'm just going to provide the same name here and click on OK. So what it does is it just like we just renamed your automated test case, right? Now I already have like a predefined workflows, like SAP workflows, which I'm going to directly, it's nothing but a UI automation steps which I'm going to directly add to the test case. So instead of writing each and every UI automation steps, I'm just going to drag and drop the workflow that I've already built. So if I click on sales order, there is a create sales order workflow, right? I'm just going to drag and drop that. So if I open this particular workflow, it has all the UI automation steps that is needed for creating sales order in the SAP system. So if we go to SAP, like it's going to open this particular transaction order, and then it's going to search for the order type OR, and it's going to fill in some information in this page and then click on save, submit, right? Once it is saved, it's going to generate an order number. If the order number is generated, then it means that that particular test case has passed, right? All those UI automations there steps are already there in this particular invoke workflow. So it's saying the following arguments are missing. I'm just going to click on import arguments. So it automatically pulled all the arguments from my workflow that I already created. So that's how the given when then condition works, right? So given you have some inputs or your application has opened, then when you actually do that actions, then whether if that action is successful, right? So I'm just going to add like an activity like verify expression here, and within verify expression, I'm just going to check whether the test case is successful, right? Whether the test steps has executed successfully and whether it has resulted in a pass or failure, right? So how do I do that? From this workflow, there is an out argument which tells you whether the order status is successful or not, right? It does some UI validation and it's going to tell you whether the order status is successful or not. So basically, I'm going to create all the inputs that is needed for the test case. For example, order status, which is like a output, right? Output from that workflow. And then again, I am going to create all the inputs that is needed for the test case. For example, material, and then customer reference, and then customer reference date, and then sold to party, and then finally quantity. So all these are inputs to my particular test case, and one of them is going to be an integer. So I'm just going to choose integer now, and this is like a Boolean. Order status is going to be pass or failed, and then you just need to go and map all these arguments to your test cases, right? For example, material, customer reference, and then customer date, and then quantity, and then quantity, sold to party, and order status as well. You just need to plug in all the inputs here. So once you did that, once you plugged in all your arguments and variables, now it's time for like adding like a verification step. Plus you're going to start generating the test data. Right now, before generating the test data, you can provide some default argument, default values here, and you can run the test case with the default value. It's just going to do that one iteration. Right, it's going to do everything in the UI. But without doing that, I'm going to directly generate like the test data for my test case. So my test case is ready, automated test case is ready, my arguments are ready. I can go in here, go to the test explorer. So I'm going to do two things, right? One is, within the test explorer, I'm going to first link my manual test cases to the automated test cases. So these are my manual test cases, right? If you check this option, it's going to show you all the manual test cases. That is nothing but whatever you see in the test manager UI here, right? And then these are my automated test cases that I created. I'm just going to link this automated test case with the manual test case so that it will be linked together. You don't see two entries here, one for automated, one for manual. And it will be easy when you publish the test results and all those stuff. So this is my test case, right? CSG01, verify sales order save functionality. I'm just going to right click, add test data, and then I'm just going to choose the generate with autopilot. Now it's going to take some time to generate the data for me. I have like a ready-made prompt which I'm going to provide, and based on the prompt, it's going to create the or refine the data for me. So initially it will generate a set of data, then I can provide like a prompt and refine that particular test data. Now, just a spoiler alert, there is some ongoing issue with the autopilot which I shared with the product team. So we may not get some accurate results now, but rest assured that it will be fixed by the UiPath product team. Maybe if it doesn't work today, try again tomorrow, it may work. Or feel free to share your product feedback with the UiPath product team and they'll be addressing it. From my end, what I have to do is I have to do it a couple of times to for me to see the results, right? I have to run the same command multiple times to see the results. But this is my ready-made prompt, right? So I want to generate only 2 records considering the time we have. And then I want to my material to be TG11. I want my sold party to be always this. I want my customer reference to be this, and then PO this, right? I'm just going to run this. So it's going to, based on my prompt that I provided, it's going to generate the data for me. Yeah, I think it did now. It did go through now. For some reason, I was experiencing some issues in the morning. But if you see here, it generated based on the input that I provided. TG11, I think sold to party is accurate. PO is accurate as well. Customer reference date is not accurate, but it's probably because of the issue that I mentioned, right? So maybe if you run it one more time, it may go through, or just for the sake of this session, we'll just go ahead and update that manually. But definitely this will be fixed in another day or so. You can reach out to the UiPath product team, and because it was working like a couple of days back. So for now, I'm just going to add it as it is for now. Or I already created like automated test cases where I generated the same data using autopilot. We can either run that test cases as well. So both should be fine. So my material is good, my PO number is good, my customer reference is good, sold to party is good, and quantity is also good. Now I'm just going to click on import, right? So as soon as I click on import, if you see here, there is a small down arrow here, and you see all the data here, right? If you generate 25 records, it's going to show 25, and if you generate 50 records, it's going to generate 50, right? So I'm just going to right click and run it. Now it's going to run the test cases, right? So while it's running the test cases, I'm just going to, so it's running the test case, it's going to open the sales order and fill in everything. So while it's running the test case, I'm just going to explain a few other things as well. As soon as it completes the cases, you can import the test results back to test manager. There is an option called upload test results to test manager. And that will upload the test results to the test manager. Of course, you can run these test cases from your orchestrator directly as an unattended test case as well. The data generation part has to be done within Studio, right? You can do only in Test Explorer. You have to do that there. Once we upload the test results to the test manager, we can use the generate insights option to review the test results, right? And then eventually we'll talk about how the SAP Heatmap and the change impact analysis works, because these inputs is needed for the SAP Heatmap. So there are two parts of SAP Heatmap. One is based on its integration, based on UiPath test suite integration with the SAP, it's going to show you which components needs to be tested more, or which components is used more. And then these test results will show, okay, whether that particular component has test cases, how many has passed, how many failed as well, right? Okay, I think it completed the test cases. And if I go to the past status here, this is a test case that I created, and these are a couple of successful scenarios, right? I'm just going to upload the test results to the test manager, and as soon as I upload the test results, it's going to show up here, right? If I come here, this is my test case. If I open this, I will start seeing the test results over here, right? I think it's still uploading. Okay. I think we did link. I think we haven't linked that yet, right? I think that's a part that we missed. So I'm just going to link that test case here. So once we create the link, then we can upload the data. So link to test manager. You're just going to search for that particular test case ID. And then if you want to add requirement, you can add. It's optional. You can leave that as it is and click on OK. And once I click on OK, if I right click and upload the test results to test manager, these results are going to start showing up here, right? So once, I think probably we'll discuss about the insights, generate insights option, and then eventually I'll hand it over to Chitu to talk about the SAP Heatmap as well, right? In terms of generate insights, so you executed your test case, right? All these data, all these test results will start appearing in your test manager. UiPath has like a new feature called generate insights. If you run this generate insights, what it does is it's going to evaluate, or it's going to analyze your testing logs and provide some insights based on your testing outcomes. Now you can generate the insights for last day, for last 7 days, from last 15 days. I'm just going to choose last day, and as soon as I choose that, you're going to see the insights reported created. If I while it's creating, we can just open an existing insights, right? Now in this screen, you will see different kind of sections like overview, top failing test, common errors, error patterns, and recommendations. It's not anything related to UiPath insights as such. So it's like a generative AI which analyzes your test execution logs and provides some insights based on that. With this, you can identify which test case is failing most, what are the common errors. If you provide like detailed logs and detailed try catch, it's going to provide more accurate common errors and error patterns. And it's going to basically provide you recommendations, which you can either, it could be like application bug to create, or it could be like a test case that you may need to fix, right? So before handing over to Chitu, let me quickly show you how the results has appeared here. So this is verify sales order functionality, right? So if you can see here, the results has passed. So now we'll just quickly move on to the SAP heat map. So Chitu, if you can talk about the SAP heat map analysis, that would be great, and I can then quickly show a demo.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Lokesh, for handing over. That was a good session. Live demo. Live demo is always fun, and it was really great to see how the new capabilities within Gen AI and Test Suite are working hand in hand.
Yeah.
Now, this is just a one slide here. Two great features that have been added to UiPath Test Manager. One is the heat map for SAP ERP and change impact analysis. And what does the SAP heat map does? So it comes with an ability to analyze how users have been. Oh, okay.
I
Let me
think it's
know if.
for me.
Let,
Yeah.
is it good?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. Yeah. So let's take look into what SAP Heatmap feature does, right? So it basically takes the data from the SAP ERP system. It could be the ECC or S4 versions, or any other ABAP system-based applications, which are SRM and SCM. There are quite a few out there. It takes the data based on the business users' usage and provides it into a nice analysis based on what applications have been used or what T codes, what in SAP lingo they refer to. And the heat map is a great visualization where it provides the visualization such that the the applications which are more frequently used have a bigger square within the heat map. And then what you can also do is integrate this heat map along with your test coverage results. So which will bring in the traffic lights like green and red based on how many success cases and failure cases you have, or where you would need to focus on for testing a brand new ECC environment. Now, where would heat map be applicable? Heat map would be a great way to explain to your customer, which areas you want to start building your test cases, because that's where the users are performing their activities more often, and you want to make sure those scenarios are working fine. Now, what does change impact analysis help? Change impact analysis, it compares code lines between an update. It could be an update that is coming from a development system to a production system, or if you're, you know, moving a support pack that is being released by SAP that you're updating in your production system, right? So before you do that, you will apply the support pack in your dev and test system, where you can compare the code lines between the different versions that were touched. So anytime there was a support pack, just like how you patch any other applications, if you are deploying into an SAP system, the code lines which have been impacted, they are all bound to what we call a transport request, just like you have in any other repositories, right? This is SAP's built-in layer where code lines are captured under what we call a transport order. Change impact analysis looks into the imported transports and then compares the code line to provide which areas are impacted for analysis. So now, for these two features to be enabled, you need to import an UiPath component that has to be installed on your SAP, which is another transport actually that you import. And then that will bring in the code line necessary for extracting the business user data and analyzing the transports, which are then visualized on the test manager. Lokesh, you're going to show the project configuration link, right? How it's connected to SAP.
Yes.
When you go, yeah. So when you go there, you create a connection from test manager, and you'll put in the necessary credentials. And once you have the add-on installed on the SAP side, you will be able to visualize that here. So that's the capability. It's really nice, easy to deploy, especially when you go to your customers, talk to the SAP basis consultants at the customer who will help you to deploy this. And I'll hand it over back to Lokesh to show you the demo on the test manager side. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, just drop me in the chat.
Thank you. Thanks, Chitu. So as Chitu mentioned, you can create that integration configuration in your project settings, right? If you go to the project settings and integration, typically the project admins will have the ability to create that new connection. But once you created the new connection, this particular like heat map would start appearing. And typically these squares and this percentage means that those are like most used components in your SAP, which in turn says that you have to test it more, right? So currently, it is not showing any results. How do you populate your results, right? It's just showing what needs to be tested more from a SAP perspective. What are the components that are mainly used? But how do you link your test cases? So at the bottom, you can see, okay, passed, failed, not executed, right? Currently, it's not showing anything. The way you link your test results to your SAP heat map is, if you go to the test cases, if you click on the label, you have to just provide a label which will create the connection between your test case and your heat map as well. So where do you get that label is, if you go to the heat map and click any one of these square, right? And if you scroll down, there is a pre-created label. So it's automatically created as soon as you enable the integration. As soon as this heat map starts appearing, this label will also be generated. And it's always in the same format, right? And tran BA01. BA01 indicates the transactional code. Here, if you see, BA01 is create sales order, BA02 change sales order, BA03 is display sales order. So this label is automatically created by the test suite through this plugin. and you just need to use this particular same label in your test cases. So if you go to your test cases, let's say this is my test case that we executed a couple of minutes back, right? And it's in parsed status. I'm just going to add the label here, tran and va01, which is going to be my sales order, create sales order component. And as soon as I complete it, if I go back here and click on heat map, ideally I would expect my results to start populating here, right? So here it's showing like a green color because all of my test cases has passed. But if one of your test cases has failed, then it's going to show the color in green. Now, one thing that I've noticed is it's always showing the latest result here, like past. What I was expecting is, like, let's say you have like a test case with like a different kind of data, right? You are doing like a data driven testing. And if out of 10 data driven records, one has failed, like 9 has passed, I would expect it to see like a red color, like fail status in this heat map, because it's just always showing the latest record that has validated, right? So if I click on this particular test case and if I go into the detailed results, so it executed twice because we have two test data records. Let's say this one is failed and this one is passed, still my SAP heat map would show like passed. It will just show the latest results. So that's one of the feedback that I provided. So because my understanding was like, if one of the data driven test has failed, I would expect my overall test to be failed, and it needs to be investigated as well. So that's one of the feedback that I provided with product team. But if you feel different or if you have any feedback around this, feel free to share with the product team. But that's one of the things that I wanted to highlight. In terms of the change impact analysis, as Chitu mentioned, you can click on analyze transports, and it will typically generate like a report like this. So currently we don't have an example that we can show, but it will show like a section like this, where this pink color typically indicates a gap, which means that there are new functionalities within SAP, which doesn't have any relevant test cases, right? There is a gap. It's a new functionality, new component. It's not tested yet. Whereas if you see this color, it's slightly different. It says fit, which means that there is a change in SAP, but you already have test cases for it. You're covered, right? It's already, that particular component is already covered. And this one says not impacted. These are not impacted, right? So that's another like a representation you would see in terms of your changes, and whether if you've got all your changes covered through your test cases. So before moving on to the next slide, any additional things that you want to add, Chitu, about SAP heat map and change impact analysis?
No, I'm good. Yeah, I think I covered the basis. But if the team needs any additional questions or any of the members listening to the recording, they can reach out to us and we can follow up with a detailed session later.
Cool. Okay, so I think we spoke about generated insights in general. So feel free to try it out, and if you have any feedback, product feedback, feel free to share it with the UiPath team. Or if you like to see more in detail, just let us know. Just have a conversation with the chapter leads. They'll be able to arrange for like deep dive sessions into these additional capabilities as well. So we just got another 6 minutes left, right? We'll move on to questions. Does anyone has any questions? I see one question in the chat. I did not have heat map on my test manager. Any setup should be done for this particular feature. I think Chitu covered this in a minute. You need like an integration enabled between SAP and UiPath test suite as well. For SAP heat map, I think there are a couple of options available. You have to do like a direct integration, and then I think you can import the data from your SAP and upload it to test suite. For change impact analysis, I think you would need a direct integration. And there is a documentation, detailed documentation in UiPath, the official documentation that explains how to set up. So this is a link. I've added this in the resources to check slide. Setting up SAP Test Manager integration for heat map generation. It explains that. And there are specific documentation talks about change impact analysis, SAP Test Manager outbound IPs. So we need to go through all this information and set up your SAP integration to start seeing that SAP heat map. Preeti, does that answer your question? Any other questions that you have? Nope.
Yep. I think this is really great. Thanks for doing this, Logesh and Chitu. And yeah, this is really helpful. And Preeti has one more question: how to generate the test report on Test Manager?
Yeah. Hopefully, I think when it comes to test report, it can mean two things, right? One is like once you executed like a test case, those results will start appearing in UiPath test manager, right? Provided you upload the results to the test manager, or if it is an internet automation, it will automatically be populated in test manager, provided your manual test case and automated test case is linked. But you can see all the test results here, right? So I executed my test case multiple times. If I click on one particular test case, it shows me the information about each of the test case, right? What is the status of the test case? I think this one is deleted. Let me pick another one. I think I might have deleted some of them, but it will show the status of each of the test case. And if you want to see like the detailed report, you can just click on open test case, click on this particular thing and open execution log, right? So that's going to provide you the execution logs for this particular test case. There are various columns you can go through and understand what your automation did, how it failed. There could be some image attachments and all those stuff. In the sense, basically, this screen will provide you the detailed information about the failure, but you can always leverage the insights functionality, right? So insights functionality is more of like it's going to provide look as like a summary of your execution, right, for the particular day for the past 7 days. So if you want to look at like a particular test case or test set, you can go to the test case or test set, open the test execution log, and see the information. But if you want to generate like a insights based on the last few runs, you can leverage the UiPath Autopilot generate insights option, which you can see on this screen. If you go to the test results, there is a generate insights option. You can use this and you can generate like insights from your execution results.
Awesome. Yep. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks, Naveen. Just one last thing. There are some FAQs available in our official documentation. Plus, we have some of the FAQs in the slides as well. So I just wanted to show this in the visually, right? So that this will be recorded and it could be made available in the YouTube channels as well. So I collated some FAQs based on the information in the documentation, based on the commonly asked questions from different customers, community members. So you can leverage these. There is a mistake here, but you can leverage these FAQs. As always, you can always reach out to us through the LinkedIn channels, or you can reach out to the chapter leads if you want to see anything more in detail, or if you have any further questions. Cool.
Yeah.
Naveen?
Thanks a lot. But feel free. Yeah. But don't forget to register to Dallas chapter so that you will not miss the upcoming sessions that we are going to conduct. And thanks everyone. And you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.